Hello and happy eclipse portal, everybody. We're in a very powerful time. If you're watching this between the solar eclipse of the 20th of March and the lunar eclipse of the 4th of April, which we're going to talk about soon, then we're in the middle of an eclipse portal. And what exactly is an eclipse portal? Well, an eclipse portal is the powerful time in between two eclipses. During this time, if you can bring your attention to bear on the areas of your life that are most powerfully impacted by the eclipses, then you can create a great deal of transformation in your life, especially in those particular areas. If you don't know the particular area of your life that's affected by the eclipse, I do also offer a vast range of astrological services through my site. We can talk more about that a little bit later on, but let's touch first upon this lunar eclipse that we're getting ready to have happen on the 4th of April, and also a little bit about the solar eclipse that we recently had, which was in the sign of Pisces and the nakshatra or lunar mansion of Uttara Bhadrapada. I spoke about this in the month ahead video that I recently did, but a lot of people have been expressing that they've been feeling really tired after this most recent eclipse. And what's happening is a very powerful transition is taking place. A process of release and letting go is happening on such a very massive level. But when these types of things happen, they tend to have to happen over time. And just as our psyche, our mind, and our emotions goes through a particular adjustment in relation to this, so too does our body. So a lot of adjusting going on. Letting go of something old, embracing something new, which we don't really have a full understanding of yet. A shift in values is taking place with this particular eclipse portal. And we're going to talk a little bit more deeply about that as we talk about the lunar eclipse, because this lunar eclipse will take place in the nakshatra of Chitra. Nakshatras are also known as lunar mansions. They are 27 subsections of the zodiac, which are associated with the fixed stars, which are outside of our solar system. Now, Chitra, let's talk a little bit about Chitra. Chitra is associated with the deity Vishvakarman, also known as Tvashtar, the celestial architect. Now, the energy of Chitra has a tone of creating something of lasting worth. And that something of lasting worth that is created is based upon our sense of ideals, our sense of understanding of where our heart truly lies. And based upon our ethics, we then begin to shape something or create something of lasting worth. When Chitra is functioning in its more negative polarity, well, we tend to get tempted astray from our path, or we're enticed by something, because Chitra is also the brightest star. It's associated with a star called Spica, okay? And that's the brightest star. So it tempts and it allures. And we get led away from Dharma, or led away from what feels right in our heart. And that's an interesting word, Dharma. Let's go a little bit more deeply into that before we touch on the astrological aspects that are surrounding this eclipse on either side, because those two are important. Dharma, most people tend to think of Dharma as being the path of righteousness. And whilst that is true, we have to look at the fact that for some people, Dharma is something that is ever evolving. It doesn't stay fixed with one particular set of concepts. Sometimes when it does, then that has a tendency to turn into dogma, or a set of beliefs that we become stuck in that don't really allow room for any new growth. And with this particular eclipse, there is very much the energy of an evolving sense of values. There are some things which are permanent. There are some things which we know are right and are connected with us and always will be the same way. Then there are those things that we think may have been something that fit within our life in terms of a set of beliefs or ideals. And then we discover that that really no longer is the case. And we find ourselves making a shift and adjustment. And there is a sense of getting to know oneself more deeply and where one's heart truly lies, and potentially a time of self-confrontation having to be honest with yourself about where your heart really is, in contrast to where you thought you were. Surrounding this eclipse on either side, we've got a lot of very powerful aspects going on. We've got a trine, a harmonious alignment between Mercury and Saturn. We're going to talk a little bit more deeply about each of these in a moment. We've got a harmonious alignment between the Sun and Jupiter. Sun forming a tense aspect with Pluto and conjuncting Uranus, Mercury trining Jupiter. There's just a lot of aspects. We're going to cover each of these in detail rather than me talking about them all here. And let's take a shift into the chart so we can let's talk about the aspects that are on either side of the eclipse. Touching briefly on them first, we were talking about Mercury and Saturn, Sun and Jupiter forming harmonious alignments. Both the Sun and Mercury will cross the plane of the recent tense aspect between Pluto and Uranus. And in addition to that, at the tail end of all of this, you've got Jupiter making a shift in the sky. Jupiter has been retrograde. When a planet's retrograde, we tend to internalize the processes that are associated with it. Now Jupiter is stationing and getting ready to return to direct motion. And Jupiter is the planet of expansion and growth, wisdom and understanding. So there is a profound sense of that happening. And with eclipses, what we tend to have happen is there are two sets of eclipses a year. We have one eclipse, and then some very powerful changes happen between the set of eclipses. The 6-month period in between creates a lot of transformation within the life of each individual based upon where the eclipse is falling in their chart. Let's start with this Mercury aspect between Mercury and Saturn, a harmonious angle of 120 degrees known as a trine. When Mercury is making this angle, Mercury will still be in Uttara Bhadrapada. And Saturn is in Anuradha. Anuradha creates a very powerful sense of devotion to whatever an individual might be devoted to, a set of beliefs, a person, an individual, a certain type of lifestyle. And Mercury is in Uttara Bhadrapada, which relates to the unknown, embracing something or having something from outside of our particular paradigm or belief system that comes in and stands to change and shift our particular set of values or our particular way of thinking. And if you're a person who likes a great deal of security in your life, sometimes that can be a little bit challenging because the old belief system becomes challenged and we have to take a look at things on a newer level. As this happens, Venus, a few very subtle things, but let's touch on all of them. Venus being the planet of values, also the planet of making wise choices. Venus is going to shift into a section of the sky that's called Kritika. Kritika relates to purification. It relates to truth. So a tendency to heal or to go through a transformation, which makes you take a deeper look at where your core values really lie. A lot of the nakshatras and lunar mansions that are associated with this particular set of aspects tie in with values, honesty, being true to oneself. Okay, we'll touch a little bit more on each of those. Also, prior to the eclipse, which happens on the 4th, you've also got the Sun and Jupiter forming a harmonious alignment with each other at the same time that Mercury and Saturn are forming a harmonious alignment with each other. And the Sun is in Revati. Revati, as I've spoken in many of the previous videos, marks the end of one cycle of one cycle of our lives. That's the easiest way to put it. And the new period has not yet begun. Okay, so there's an in-between phase where a lot of adjustments are going on and the stage is being set for the next scenario of our lives. Jupiter is in Ashlesha. Ashlesha relates to the Nagas. So on one level, it's about wisdom because serpents represent wisdom. Very deep, penetrating insight, which leads to wisdom, understanding, and potential. So a very profound process of self-discovery going on initially, which may make you feel a little bit insecure about things, but as things slowly really shift and change. A higher level of security does develop over time. As the sun is forming this aspect to Jupiter, it's also forming a tense alignment with Pluto and getting ready to conjunct Uranus. Now, Pluto, let's talk about Pluto first, because we were talking about Venus a moment ago, and Venus rules the section of the sky that Pluto is in, which is the nakshatra of Purva Ashadha. Purva Ashadha deals with the causal nature of the soul. Being in our true state, the way we were put here, being in our truth, our authenticity, living in the authentic self. That's the easiest way to put it. When we're in that state, we naturally attract to ourselves the very things, experiences that we need in order to prosper and to grow. But many times in this modern material lifestyle, we think of prosperity as being something different. We think of prosperity as being that which is good for the wallet rather than that which is beneficial for the soul. And so what tends to happen is that we put up a superficial front, or we put up an artifice in order to make our way through a situation. Now, with this particular eclipse, as you have Sun, the light giver, and Pluto, the Lord of transformation, Lord of the underworld, taking us to those dark places, the light is going to shine into those deep, dark places, potentially where you've been hiding from yourself, right? But the important thing to remember is, although these processes may be difficult, they bring power if you're willing to confront your vulnerabilities. And having the sun conjuncting Uranus at the same time that that's happening, it gives you the potential to overturn something in your life, which has become a standard that has been too etched in stone for far too long, and gives you a chance to really make a shift in accordance with that particular area of your life, wherever these aspects tend to be falling. Mercury, at the same time, as we inch closer, the degrees will be a little bit higher. Mercury will form a harmonious alignment with Jupiter, and then Mercury is going to be forming the same aspect. The Sun and Mercury are going to inch closer to a conjunction. When the Sun, which sheds light, and Mercury, the planet of the mind, right judgment, insight, when those two planets join each other, it brings penetrating vision, so that you really have the potential to understand something. And both of these planets are in Revati, which is associated with Mercury. So you're in that in-between phase, but that in-between phase lends you the potential to be able to really see very deeply where things need to head, whereas previously you might have been hiding from yourself. So although it might be difficult that these particular aspects are forming a tense alignment with Pluto and conjuncting Uranus, well, unless you confront what you have maybe been hiding from and have not wanted to take a look at, then the change would never happen. And all of this is happening around the one thing which we have yet to talk about yet. So let's get on to it. Let's talk about this lunar eclipse, okay? So a solar eclipse, in case you didn't know, a solar eclipse will always happen on a new moon. And a lunar eclipse will always happen on a full moon. Okay, so we're going to have a full moon on the 4th of April. And when a new moon happens in close proximity to one of the nodes, which in Vedic astrology we call Rahu and Ketu, then a solar eclipse is created. And when a full moon happens in close proximity, I don't know if I just said that or not, but I think you understand what I'm saying. When the full moon happens in close proximity to one of those nodes, then we have a lunar eclipse. Okay, a lunar eclipse, when a lunar eclipse happens, the Earth is in between the sun and the moon. So what happens is the Earth's shadow gets cast upon the moon. There's some symbolism there. If you look at the Earth as the place where we live out our consciousness, some of us, I know myself, I sometimes dwell on Mars and sometimes on Neptune, and I'm sure many of you are the same way. But let's look at our Earth-based reality for a little while. If you look at the Earth as where we live out our consciousness, then you've got the sun, which relates to the soul, hitting the Earth, our sense of Earth-based consciousness, and casting a shadow upon the moon, which relates to consciousness in general, and also our emotions. So our emotions become somewhat shadowed by our material consciousness, and it becomes a little bit difficult to really see things. And as this is happening in Chitra, it may be difficult to understand where your true beliefs really lie in relation to a particular area of your life, or whatever house or area of your life that this full moon is falling in. And as this is in Libra, there is, of course, a balancing out process that's going on as well. But an insight develops in association with this. Having been through a difficult challenge, that's making you realize, well, really, I don't want to have to go through that again. And there is a potential way of not having to go through that again, which is if I just honor myself and where I truly lie with something, rather than where I thought I was with the particular area of my life, then I might be able to avoid having to deal with the same difficult lesson again, because challenges, they happen so that we make an adjustment and so that we grow. And as I was saying at the onset of this video, there's an evolving sense of values that is different from what your previous beliefs may have been. And to the extent that you're able to embrace that and welcome that into your life, for the period of your life that you're now experiencing, that's the extent that you're going to be able to move along with this particular eclipse energy. As I was saying earlier, Dharma really becomes an evolving set of values. We're all born in a specific way, and that's really shown in our birth chart. But there are certain things that happen over the course of our lives that cause us to grow, that cause us to let go of one way of looking at things and to embrace a new way of looking at things. And this eclipse season is definitely about release and welcoming in. Letting go of a place where you are stuck and welcoming in a release, a growth, and a new way of looking at things, which helps you to change and shape your life for the future. If you'd like to know a little bit more about how these eclipses will affect you personally, I do offer a vast range of astrological services through my website. There is a link on this YouTube video, unless you've closed it down already, which I don't blame you. I do the same thing. And if you closed it down already, there's a link further down on the page to my astrological services page. I do person-to-person consultations using this very same tool that I'm using now to record the video, only there's the potential for both of us to have a conversation in this window by webcam, and I can also show you your chart as I do within this video. And there's also personalized video reports. If you're the shy type and you just want me to do all the talking, you can do a personalized video report. And even for those of you who appreciate the written word much more than the spoken word, there are written reports. I should say the person-to-person consultations, all my consultations get recorded as a video. Just like you're watching this YouTube video. Your consultation would be recorded, kept private, of course. I would give you a link to a private file where you can go and download the video after our consultation is done. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube page yet, please consider doing so you can receive regular updates each time I release a new video. And until next time, I do hope, oh, and by the way, next time will be the new moon in Aries towards the end of the month, unless I do something in between. So until next time, I do hope, my friends, that you'll take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.